to be back in the chambers. Council CEO, directors, ladies and gentlemen, the traditional custodians of the land which we are privileged to call home. The Iwi people represent a human link dating back almost 60,000 years as part of one of the oldest living cultures on the planet. We pay our respects to the Indigenous elders past and present and recognise their continuing connection to our land and our community. Thank you very much. I declare the meeting open. And in attendance today, Councillor Jones is not able to be with us, but because she has a bit of a chest infection and rightly she has elected to stay at home, I'd like to get a motion that Councillor Jones is admitted to the meeting by video conference. Would somebody like to move? Councillor Hassan moves, Councillor May seconds. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Councillor Jones, I can see you're online.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. You're now part of the meeting. Thank you very much. Councillor Bonaventure, do you have a
Just
question?
in light of that, Your Worship, and with Councillor Jones being online, she has asked if I could ask a couple of questions which she has given me on her behalf.
It's
a lot simpler than her trying to relay it via the PA system.
And that's fine, Councillor Bonaventure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our opening prayer today, for our first meeting back in Chambers in 12 months, which is fantastic, is the Reverend Dr. Julia Pittman. Julia, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors and all council workers. For those who may not have met me before, I'm the minister at St Paul's and Armitage Uniting Church in the city of Mackay, and you can hear me at 10 a.m. on Sundays on Radio Church on my 105.9 FM. Let us join together in prayer. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as this council for the Mackay region gathers for another year, we ask you to bless its work. We recognise since last the council met that we are now in new chambers, back in our old chambers and no longer in the MEC. We recognise too the events that have occurred on the world and national stage. The members of our nation have witnessed with relief that violence in Washington has given way to a peaceful transfer of power. The members of our nation have seen renewal in another group of Australians realising the responsibilities of citizenship, and the members of our nation have experienced genuine pride in the awards of the Australians of the Year, as well as our own local heroes recognised here in the Mackay region. Amid the ongoing vigilance that is required to respond to the global pandemic, we pray that the work of this council will seek to build up the community and to enhance the welfare of all the people, so that our land may be a truly united series of local councils throughout Australia. We pray this in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Julia Pittman. Welcome to the members of the public today. It's great to have public gallery back in council proceedings. I draw your attention to the live streaming of council proceedings and that notice on the top right hand of our screen there. We are recording and publishing, in accordance with the council's bylaws and the standing orders, the procedures of this meeting, which is your voice if you intend to say anything as well. And we're also required to tell you that you may be subject to legal action if your actions or comments are deemed inappropriate or unacceptable. So that's what we're required to tell you. And welcome. No apologies. Condolences, councillors. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to talk today about former staff member Chris Augustin, who passed away at age 44 on the 19th of January. Chris, along with his wife Candice, both worked for council for periods of time. Chris with civil operations and Candice with MECC, and I'm sure a lot of people will remember her from one of the faces at Food Space. Shortly after Chris turned 40, he was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer, which was inoperable and incurable. And during his illness, both he and Candice became advocates for bowel cancer awareness and for raising money for Bowel Cancer Australia, who are always looking for extra support. Chris was also well respected and well loved with Mackay Lions Soccer Club, where he was a player and then moved on to coach junior and senior soccer. He was named as Pioneer Valley face of Relay for Life, but it had to be cancelled last year in 2020. As he became more unwell, he and Candice allowed their Facebook friends to be part of what they called Making Augie Memories, and I'm sure those memories will live on for a lot of people for a long time. As we speak, Chris's funeral service is happening, and I ask as a council that we pass on our heartfelt and sincere condolences.
Thank you. We'll do that. Councillor Mann, thank you very much. Are there any other condolences? One other thing I should have mentioned at the start was this meeting is operating under a COVID safe plan, which is why we've got such a distance between us and the members of the public. And there's only one door that members in the public and other members who want to join them not are members of the council staff, and that's that door over there. All other members and council staff must come through this door and exit through that door. So thank you very much. Let's move on. 7.1 is the confirmation of the minutes of the 9th of December. That's our last meeting. Those minutes have been circularised. We've had nothing further to come back on those. Would somebody like to move that those minutes be adopted? Councillor Green moves. Councillor Mann seconds. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Thank you.
I'm for, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. I will ask for that in future motions. Thank you. Let's move on. There's no business arising out of those minutes, as I've indicated. There's no Merrill minutes today. So the consideration of committee reports and recommendations. 10.1 is the Audit Committee report. We received the closing report of 2019-2020 period from the external auditors. It was a sound result. CEO, do you wish to expand on that?
No.
Okay, I think it's fairly well straightforward. Are there questions around that, Councillor Bollinger?
I have one on behalf of Councillor Jones, Your Worship. And her question is, on page 12, the minutes of the Audit Advisory Committee, I note there is a paragraph that reads, the state government has set up the Office of Independent Assessor who are overwhelmed with requests, and Mayor Williamson believes the mechanism set up to assist councillors is broken. Her question is, could you please explain the comment and what you believe is broken?
So my reasoning behind that comment was that the advice from the department is that that office is overwhelmed, and if most people who, from a councillor perspective, most people who put in applications for assistance will get an answer that they can't assist because they're overwhelmed. So the system set up for councillors to access as an independent assessor is essentially not working. And so we've already made those sorts of representations independently to the state. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Well, are there any further questions? Would somebody like to move? Then it's fairly well straightforward, the Audit Committee report. Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves. Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor May?
No.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thanks.
I'm for the motion, Your
Councillor
Worship.
Jones, I take it you're in favour?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'll get used to it, Councillor Jones. 10.2, the Local Authority Waste Management Advisory Committee, or LAWMAC. Once again, it's a report on LAWMAC's last meeting. Really well straightforward. Are there any questions on that? Councillor Hassan, would you like to move? Okay, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Just very briefly, so myself and Councillor Green travelled to Townsville to attend the LAWMAC meeting, which I think both of us agree that's always a really good learning experience. We always get to hear about the current happenings within the waste services sector throughout the state. As you can see in the minutes, those meetings are very well attended by regional councils. It's an extremely important meeting for all of us, and a significant number of councils involved in the diverse range of issues just make it really worthwhile for us to attend. And I'd just like to particularly highlight the work contributed to LAWMAC by Makai Regional Council staff member Jason Grandcourt, who fulfils the role of technical officer for that committee. Jason's work is hugely appreciated by that committee, and I'm sure he always goes over and above his normal workload. And I just would like to ask the Director to pass on our thanks to Jason for continuing on in that role again, and for the amount of work that he commits to it. And I'm very pleased to be Council's representative on that committee.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hassan. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Green speaking for.
Thank you. I wish to take this moment to officially congratulate Councillor Belinda Hassan for her election to the LAWMAC Executive Committee in the role of representative for the Greater Whitsunday Council's having attended a number of LawMac events with Councillor Hassan, I know that she has an appetite to learn more about this exciting and changing industry, and I know that she'll be a strong representative voice for us and for the North Queensland region. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you.
I'm in favour.
4.
I'm in favour, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Motion's carried. 10.3, Local Disaster Management Group meeting of the 7th of December. The minutes have been circulated under this agenda item. Are there questions surrounding this? Somebody like to move? Councillor Engel moves, seconded by Councillor May. Councillor Engel.
Thank you, Worship. As in the minutes, it reports that there are now 49 river and rain gauges within the local area active and providing information to both BOM, Bureau of Meteorology and local government. And the next highlight is the Local Disaster Management Group Evacuation Centre subplan was adopted by the LDMG. And I just want to mention that Councillor May took the opportunity to congratulate Andrew and his team down in our emergency management team for getting that up and running. It's not an easy thing to get done, so we're in a good place with that. And all agencies report that they're running and good to go if anything comes our way.
Thank you very much, Councillor Engel. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
Motion's passed. Thank you very much. No, it's nobody against. Thank you. Motion's carried. 11.1, under Correspondence and Officers Report, the Office of the Mayor and CEO. CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to draw the Council's attention to the safety report in particular. We've had 3 LTIs over the course of the year, which again is too many. Health and safety is our number one focus. But I am also pleased, though, on that note, to say that our safety spot checks are commencing for contractors that do work for council, because we again want to increase the safety standards out in the regional councils areas as well. And I'd also like to just acknowledge Peter Kingy and Brodie French for having been awarded the Makai Regional Council Safety Awards. The other things in the report I'll point out is we've received 4.4 million of funding from state government towards roads and social infrastructure, and we've also completed the North Queensland monsoon work. So the final finishing off the micro piling, Strong Beach pavements has now been completed, and gravelling of the unsealed roads for 960k is now being completed.
Thanks, CEO. Questions for the CEO? Councillor Mann.
Yeah, on page 49, electronic page 49, overdue corrective actions. Most outstanding actions relate to contractors, and while the number's reduced, there's still 4 actions overdue between 60 and 360 days, and I'm just wondering what we're doing to address that.
CEO.
Yeah. So we've put in place a more robust monitoring system. That corrective actions have been coming down in time and over time. There are a number of outstanding actions related to property services, which are sort of long time fix and builds, but we have a focus on that, and you should see those coming down. And so from a management perspective, we are mindful that we're not where we want to be in terms of close out of corrective actions on time.
Further questions? Councillor Bonmatura.
On behalf of Councillor Jones, Your Worship, just on page 91, Your Worship, it states our annual leave, staff annual leave, and this matter has been ongoing concern for many years, and she just wants to ask, how far have we come in resolving the issue, and how far we've got to go, and will it be fully resolved by the due date, which is 2021, I think. I know it's on there. But yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor. CEO?
Yeah, it's something that we need to continuously be on top of, so that was also pointed out by some of our auditors as well. We've raised it at the senior leadership team meeting, and there's robust reporting in place for that. We're also developed plans for people with excess leave that we'll be monitoring and making sure that leave is used. So we should see that trending down. We'll also note that it has probably spiked a little bit in this period because of Corona, and a lot of people couldn't travel and would have been taking annual leave and things like that to travel. But it's something that we do have to keep an eye on going forward.
Thanks, CEO. It was identified as in the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee, and it was identified in the letter closing out, that our liability for leave has increased. So, yeah, as the CEO said, we are totally aware of it. Are there other questions? Councillor Dalla?
Just a quick question that's arisen from that. If we get to the point where we're starting to catch up on those accruals, is that going to leave us, or is it likely to leave us in any way understaffed in certain areas, or not?
No, this should just be the natural way we manage a business. We're resourced, assuming that people will take proper annual leave, so that's part of the plans that we're agreeing with those employees about how we'll bring down those leave balances in a way that works for them, but also doesn't have sort of everybody going out on leave at once. That's part of the planning.
Thank you. Further questions? Further questions? Somebody like to move the report to adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Really just want to highlight a couple of things in the report around the Council and Community Days. We were managed in the last 4 months of last year to visit all parts of our region, mainly focused on looking at council infrastructure and council projects and what's been happening in those areas. So due to the COVID restrictions, we've not been able to have that normal interaction we would in our Council and Community Days with the community, but we will look to see if we can expand that into the future as restrictions begin to ease. I think some of the other highlights from the report was the museum consultation's been underway, and we took advantage of having a workshop, an open shop at the Blue Water Quay, which happened to be coinciding with our launch of the Heritage Trail. So able to have councillors at that consultation, as well as the sessions that we did around the region. Absolutely fantastic to be part of the launch of the Heritage Discovery Trails, and Councillor Mann's been working with the Heritage and Advisory Committee, Character and Heritage Advisory Committee. The staff have done a fantastic job bringing that to fruition. And then, of course, we participated in the first part of the walk of the Heritage Trail, which was absolutely fantastic. I think another great highlight in the report is the external funding, and to year to date, for the 6 months, this council has received just a bit over $17 million in external funding. And the officers do a great job in pursuing those external funding opportunities, which then lessens the burden to our ratepayers. So well done to the team there. And of course, it's great to see that some of those road restoration works coming to a close. As we know, Cyclone Debbie caused a lot of problems. We've got the monsoonal trough on top of that again, and those works are now coming to a completion. So that's really fantastic to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor May. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? For the motion, those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. And Councillor Jones?
I'm in favour, Your Worship.
Good, thank you. Motion's carried. You're used to this. Eventually. 11.1.2 of the Strategic Financial Report for December. And whilst this is pretty well straightforward, it's good reading actually. The revenue year to date's up by $1.3 million, and the expenses year to date are under by $1.3 million, which is pretty good work by the executive team, I think. CEO, do you wish to address this?
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think you've probably summed it up quite well, that most revenue lines are trending up, so we're about 2.7 million favourable. We are likely to have some order of higher OPEX spending coming through in the second half of the year, but we're still certainly on track, if not a bit ahead of where we need to be from the OPEX perspective. In relation to CapEx, the report is showing that we're tracking with our CapEx program as well. Having said that, we do see that there are some risks there of underspending in the CapEx program, which means not getting all the works out there. So we're looking at our CapEx program and also looking at what might be able to be brought forward, and we'll be coming back and keeping council advised of the CapEx program.
Thanks, CEO. Questions for the CEO around this report? No questions for the CEO? That's a pretty good report, and it's very good year to date. Points to hopefully a fairly good 6 months coming up. So, would somebody like to move then the report's adoption? Councillor Englert moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Englert.
Worship, you've used, between yourself and the CEO, you've used up all my notes, so we'll leave it there. Thank you.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. And sorry, Councillor Jones.
In favour, Your Worship.
The motion's carried. 11.1.3, the final management report for the Mackay Regional Council. Now this was presented to the Audit Committee on the 3rd of December. It's a letter to me by the Queensland Audit Office, and I'm required by the regulations to table a copy of this at the next ordinary meeting of the local government, which is today. Are there questions around this? Fairly well straightforward, and the letter is quite straightforward and succinct. Okay, no questions? Would somebody like to move then? Councillor May moves. Seconded by Councillor Englert. Councillor May. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried.
In favour, Your Worship.
4. Thank you. 11.1.4, the Council report for the attendance of the Development of Northern Australia Conference, 23-25 November 2020. And this is a good report. Are there questions around this report so far? No questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Green moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor Green.
Thank you. Your Worship, I found the process of writing this report with Councillors May and Townsend to be an enjoyable experience, because it allowed me the time to reflect upon the learnings and experience that I gained from attending this very high calibre conference. Indeed, I feel very fortunate to have kicked off this term with the opportunity to educate myself about the challenges, the common goals, and indeed the opportunities across Northern Australia communities, and also the opportunity to meet key decision makers regarding the investment and the development of Northern Australia. The conference was also a chance to showcase the Mackay region, and I'd like to extend my congratulations to the Deputy Mayor Karen May, Director Alida Nugent, and GW3 CEO Kylie Porter for delivering a series of very well attended and well received presentations. Council staff ran a professional booth during the conference, highlighting the Mackay waterfront project, which attracted interest from many sectors. The networking events we attended led to invitations for valuable and relevant learning experiences, and the ability to directly interface with the presenters during the conference was invaluable. It was also a chance to see what our neighbours in Rockhampton are doing and what they are doing well, and what can Mackay do to remain relevant and competitive nationally, regionally and internationally. So I'd like to thank Council for the opportunity to attend the conference, and based on my own experience, I strongly recommend other councillors to attend this well-renowned and highly valuable conference when the opportunity next arises. It's to this Council's benefit that councillors are educated and informed and connected to enable us to see the big picture when it comes to planning strategically to make the Mackay region the best region in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green. Speaker against? Any other speakers? No other speakers. Councillor May, speaking for.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would concur with Councillor Green, and thank you very much for those kind words. It's always a great opportunity to attend a conference of this calibre right in our backyard, where we were able to travel to Rockhampton. And I think Councillor Green makes some good points around staying relevant in the very competitive market of Northern Australia and regional Australia. We are, when you look at the map, we're just a little dot on the map, and as a council, it's really, really important that we gain knowledge and we see what other regions are doing. We can learn from that, we can bring it back, and we can, hopefully improve the Mackay region for the better. There was some fantastic workshops. It was just a bit of a shame. There was 5 streams of workshops happening, so there was only 3 councillors attending. So it was a bit of a shame that we couldn't cover a whole breadth of the conference, but we tried to pick the streams that were most relevant to our region and our council. The other thing that was really fantastic, and we highlighted it in the report, was the tour of the Rockhampton Museum of Art. Absolutely fantastic to have a private tour of that, and that came about from just making connection with people at the conference, and it was really good learnings. Puts us in good stead to take and learn from that what we might do at our own waterfront development. So I think all in all a fantastic opportunity, and I thank Council for allowing us to attend.
Thanks, Councillor May. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Townsend speaking for.
Well, there's not a lot for me to cover after Councillor Green and Councillor May. But for me personally, it was a great opportunity. It was invaluable for me as a new councillor. It was invaluable for me to learn and have the opportunity to attend workshops. As I said, there were many, many highlights. We've put a lot of information in our comprehensive report. I hope that everybody's had a chance to have a read, and I concur with Councillor May. It was just an opportunity missed for a lot of our councillors to go, because we were sitting down making notes for which ones can we get to, and there were a few that we were unable to. But a great opportunity, and thank you to Council for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Councillor Townsend. Any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura, you're speaking
For the motion.
for.
And just like to thank the councillors for the report, and as Councillor Townsend said, a lot more ability for her to have learned stuff and brought it back to us. It is great to see it on paper where we can also read what you saw, and the report is excellent. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Bonaventura. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you.
In favour, Your Worship.
You're for, Councillor Jones, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move on to the reports now. The Capital Works report makes up the first report for our review for November and December, and I'll ask the Director.
Thank you. Yeah, speaking to the Capital Works report for November, December 2020, we have no LTIs during the period, but you will see from the graph on 1.1, still quite a few minor incidents. Just looking into those incidents a little bit more to see where there might be any trends or areas that we need to focus on of concern. And we do have one there with 2 incidents with foreign matter in the eyes of some of the workers who were grinding on site, and we've looked into that particular issue. They did have eye protection, but we're actually looking into double protection for people who are in that situation. Year-to-date spend is just under 40 million at 38.6. That report does say that that's 98% of what we forecast to do, but as the CEO alluded to earlier, it doesn't. It's an underspend in terms of where we'd like to be on the program. So we're taking steps to look at that and bringing that to Council as a separate piece of work in a briefing later today. Just to look at what projects are slipping, why, and what we might be able to bring forward for future works. And then you'll see there some of the projects and other pieces of work in the capital program that were completed during the period, about 30 plus projects in that particular body of work.
Thank you very much, Director. Questions for the Director? Councillor May.
We've got 2. One on page 119, resealing works. Packages have been affected by budgetary constraints with de-scoping necessary. Just wondered what's happening.
You'll extrapolate on that explanation. Director?
There's not enough money, so we have to do less work, basically, is what that means. So, yeah, it's not uncommon that we have a budget, obviously, for a project. We stick to that budget, generally speaking. We do have exceptions where we bring it to Council and ask for money, but in this particular case, we have a rolling program. Tenders came in, and so we have to rescope projects by coming back to a budget.
Okay. And you've got another one, Councillor Mann?
So Caping Road bridge replacement, there was a diversion in place, and I just wondered if anything was affected with all the rain that we had in December.
Yeah. So the temporary diversion was washed away, and the big wet we got was put back in by the contractors, and that did happen a number of times over that period. So yeah, look, it's not uncommon, it's not ideal to be doing it this time of the year. We would prefer to have that project more advanced by Christmas that we did, but we are where we are. So yeah, they have reinstated that a number of times.
Okay. Councillor May.
I just wanted to follow on from Councillor Mean's question in regards to the reselling program. So we've gone to tender and the prices are obviously way more than what we anticipated. I suppose, how do we safeguard against that, and is there an alternate delivery mechanism to be able to try and get better value if the providers of those services is, you know, way more than what we anticipated?
Yeah, look, it was still a competitive tender, and of course our budgets are really just based on the estimate for the rates of that work at the time that they're put together. Keeping in mind that resale programs and actual programs are just a rolling program, so if we don't get to it this year, we can certainly get to it next year. It's hard to safeguard against it because historical rates for that sort of work is really what we use to base our estimates on. And so really it becomes an exercise to just go back to the list of projects is what it is, that program, and relook at your priorities as to what can get delivered as part of that budget. And so, in terms of alternative methods, yeah, look, there's not a lot. You know, there's only 3 or 4 players in that space, generally speaking. Sometimes we only get 2. You know, recently with the ring road being around for the last few years, we've had trouble getting contractors, and then we've had trouble getting them mobilised because of the priorities that TMR have pulled that supply out to the ring road. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor May. Further questions? No further questions? Thank you, Director. Oh, you have a question, Councillor?
I do actually, Your Worship. I've got 2, one from me, one from Councillor Jones. Just in relation to the overspend on stormwater culverts and relining works, is this a common occurrence? Like I noticed we're a couple of $100,000 above. Just, is that due to the condition of the culverts when we sort of finally went to do them, that they're a lot worse condition than what we thought?
Yeah, basically. So there's some early work gets done on the culverts when they go to be relined. First of all, cleaning, and then generally repair or patching work that happens before the reline. So the extent of that repair and patching is what changes the rate. So the rate for the relining itself is set, but it's the amount of work that has to be done in preparation that sort of pushes some of that work.
So it could be quite extensive because we've got a lot of stormwater type culverts, so we've just got to be mindful of that.
Thanks, Councillor Ventura. So you got a second question?
Second question, on behalf of Councillor Jones, on page 114, and it states, I understand why the EV system is not working because it doesn't marry with our other systems. What did we pay for the EV system? And I see the IT team are building an in-house solution. Are we confident that this will give us what we need?
Director.
Yeah, so we don't have an EV system per se, so we didn't pay for an EV system as such. What we're saying in the comments there is that the data that comes through to us at the moment from a number of different systems doesn't produce EV reporting as a one-stop shop. The solution that IT is referenced in that question that are working on is called Empower. Empower is a tool that helps us to monitor, display and report projects in one place, which is what we've been working on for some months with IT and capital program and the long-term financial forecasting team. Empower is the tool that's going to be able to do some of that EV reporting for us, and we're just working through how that will work now. So the answer is we haven't paid for anything more to get EV reporting. It's just a reporting mechanism that we haven't been used to doing before.
Right. Thanks very much. Are there further questions for the Director? Councillor May, you've got on.
Just one more question in regards to the Lansdowne Road project. I note that it finished, was completed like 2 months earlier than anticipated. I'm just wondering how did we get, like that time frame so wrong? Because as we know, there was lots of concerns in the community around that project and the closing of the road. So I just asked that, how did we estimate that time frame?
Yeah, it's not really wrong. It's still going to be going till Feb's only a few days away. So actually the project's not finished, it's just open to the public. So our program for that entire project has not really changed that much. It's just the contractor was able to complete their work, get the road sealed and open to the public a couple of weeks quicker than anticipated. So the reality is, a lot of the projects we report on in this report are not complete in terms of closing out. The contractor's still there, tidying up the site, they have to do some other works, but just so happens what the public sees is opening a road or, you know, not opening a road, and of course that's where we're at. So really the overall timeframe is actually not that far removed from what we originally planned.
Thanks, Director.
So just a comment, Mr Mayor, so perhaps we need to look at our messaging, because it was clearly in the messages that were put out was that the job was completed basically. So I think we need to just have a look at the messaging, because I think it's not a good look for council to be saying that we're closing a road for 4 months. We cause all this concern in the community, and really the road closure was only going to be 2 months. So, and I understand we need to have some flexibility in that and you know, some sort of timeframes there, but I think we just need to look at our messaging a bit better.
Okay. So councillors, where there's comments attached to questioning, we'll do that in the balance of the report when we're actually speaking to it. Okay, questions are about questions, and we need to be succinct in our questioning.
So was there another question?
Comments we'll leave to speaking to the report. Do you have another question, Councillor England?
Sorry, last one, Your Worship. In the River Street demolition, the project has been delayed due to identification of additional unsuitable material. What are we talking about there?
Certainly, Director.
Yeah, thank you. There was asbestos found in the building, which they didn't think was there. It's actually concealed between the lines of 2 old sheetings on the building, so it was not identified in the early reports and investigations that were done. So there was a couple of week delay there where they had to get a contractor in to do that asbestos removal, get the asbestos clearance, and all that occurred around prior to Christmas and just after Christmas. So that held them up a little bit.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions? Thank you very much, Director. Would somebody like to move then the report's adoption? Councillor England moves, Councillor Mann seconds, Councillor England.
Thank you, Worship. It is a massive report. Our LTIs, as stated by the Director, projects where construction was completed on page 107. There's too many to list, so obviously a lot of work been getting done in this last reporting period. The Portfolio Management Office has got the project hub live on our council website now, and that displays the online map for projects listed and gives everyone an idea of what programs are currently in construction, end dates and any delays. Design Services have completed design on Anzac Street at Marion, Serena Water Main, the Sydney Street Water Main and the Bridge Rehabilitation Program. And Contract Services has been working on a couple of our boat ramps at Victor Creek and Murray Creek, at Camplin Beach as well, upgrading car parking and ramp width. And and as mentioned in the questions, the River Street demolition was delayed, but we hope to see some more activity real soon.
Thank you very much. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? Councillor Bowman, you're speaking for?
Just in relation to the causeway that we've been speaking about, thank the Director for that, and that is completed well ahead of schedule. And I certainly understand that in times when you're setting a program like that, wet season, etc., it could delay, so it's a bit difficult to put a time frame on when we'll actually reopen the road. But I'm very appreciative on my behalf and on behalf of the public that use it, that the fact that it was open well before Christmas again for general public use. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bowman. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. And before I say the motion's carried, sorry, Councillor Jones, you speaking?
For the motion, Your Worship.
For. Thank you. Motion's carried. 11.3.1, the Community and Client Services Monthly Review for December. Director Hayes.
Thank you, Your Worship. See, it was great to see that the first time since COVID, our NEC was at full capacity for our New Year's Eve event just before the end of the year. So that's 1,090 seats in the auditorium that we have filled. We also had an online audience of over 10,000 people. And of note, this included viewers from 6 states in Australia, as well as from 11 other countries around the world. Our virtual programs and social media posts were also really strong across our library services during November and December, and had a total reach to an audience of around 75,000 people if we combine all of our virtual programs. The 1920 annual report was adopted by Council after being compiled and designed completely in-house by our corporate communications and marketing team, and their skills were also on display by completely producing in-house the Mayor's annual Christmas video as well. The annual Cyclone Saturday event was held at Canelands, and we had over 1,200 residents that were seeking out information to inform their storm season preparedness, which was great. And in results that are really pleasing, after we've completed our December food business inspections, more than 96% of our region's food businesses achieved an Eat Safe food rating of 3 stars or greater, which is an outstanding result. I'd also like to note, as Councillor Main pointed out earlier, the museum community consultation was completed in December, just prior to Christmas, and we're really pleased with the responses. We will have a report coming back to Council in late February that will highlight what the community has said in relation to the questions that were asked. And lastly, I just wanted to note that while it did occur a little while ago, the report does include November, and we did join with our community in celebrating NAIDOC Week from 9 to 15 November. Our annual flag raising ceremony was held on Thursday, 12th of November, and included a very moving performance from Patrick Hyde.
Thank you very much. Director, are there questions for the Director? Councillor Mann.
So I've got 3. But the first one is about a person found trespassing within the library, and I wondered if there was an issue with security, because I believe that was after hours. Or I think that's what I read in the report.
Okay, Director.
Thank you, Worship. It wasn't actually within the body of the library, Councillor Mann. It was actually within the garden area of Dudley Denny City Library out the back. Someone had actually scaled the fence and was resting in one of the benches down in the courtyard area. The staff did the right thing. They called for security.
Waited until they're adequately rested.
Thank you. Second question.
So de-accessioning at Greenmount Homestead, and I'm just wondering what will happen to the items that are de-accessioned.
Yeah, Director.
Thank you. That will depend upon the nature of the items. I think where possible we seek to return them to whomever has donated them to within our collection. If that's not possible, then we would have to determine another relevant home for the item, or if it's something that we have duplication of. So it's not a straightforward answer, but we do try to rehome the items where possible.
Thanks. Councillor, third question.
This Heritage Collection, where it says 100 images were digitised during November and December. I'm just wondering how long it actually takes to scan and digitise an item.
Director.
I don't have the exact time period that it takes, Councillor Mann, but I do know that we have a project at the moment to try and scan 5,000 images to really cut through a bulk of the work that we have there. Getting through 100 in a month, though, is quite an achievement given the rest of the workload that the team have to do. It's not just scanning an image, it's actually also researching it, storing it in an appropriate way for it to be recalled, making it of use to the community, etc. So there is quite a portion of work that goes into each single one.
Further questions? Councillor Bella.
I have 2. The first being regarding the Indian cherry tree. Is this I know we found the one, but is it a similar tree to the what is known in the area around Palmyra as logwood, which is a thorny, invasive sort of a tree? I've actually seen it, and yeah, no one seems to sort of to know about it or anything like that. I'm just wondering whether it's the same tree, whether that could be the source of it.
I would need to get further information and come back to you on that, Councillor.
The other jaguar chiclet, I take it that's a fish?
Yes.
And is it a little fella by the looks of what they're doing there? And if I could just ask, how bad is the issue? You know, questions relating to future management, if we can get a rough idea of what we're going to do about it.
I'm not sure that we fully appreciated the size of what we're looking at here at the moment. It's just very early days for the team in terms of receiving some training and being able to do some early testing. So I can certainly find some further information and report.
And how damaging they are to in what way to other things. That would be good. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Are there further questions? No further questions. Would somebody like to move then the adoption of the Community and Client Services Monthly Review? We'll get it there. Councillor Mann, second by Councillor Anglin. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I think it's a credit to Community and Client Services for their focus on safety. There's obviously some factors outside their control with incidents that are happening. But to get through 225 manager safety interactions and 5 site safety inspections in that 2-month period is really good. While there was no LTLs, I think it's very disappointing for our staff that they're being subjected to inappropriate public behaviour all the time too. And I I just hope that we can try and mitigate that. I know that's out of our control. I continue to be very impressed with the breadth of services offered in our libraries right across our region and the take-up rate of those too. So the public certainly are very appreciative of it. Artspace continue to offer high-quality exhibitions, public programs and programs to engage the kids as well, which is always really valuable during school holidays. And I just want to make mention of the Mayor's Christmas video, which was well received, with the title of Council Saves Christmas for Children of Makai. It certainly was a lot of fun making it. There was a lot of ad-libbing went on, and I was really pleased to see that there was lots of positive comments from staff and from online audiences.
Thank you very much. Are there speakers against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bella, speaking for.
A couple of points I'd like to raise. Firstly, with regard to our star rating, which I completely got wrong last time. I publicly acknowledge that. It's very good to see the proportion of our businesses that are 3-star or better. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I would be tempted to say that the star system is a very good motivator in improving the performance of those areas. So I think it's been a bit of a masterstroke. Moving along, the spraying hours on our weeds on the roadsides and whatever, the increase in that is outstanding. You know, if you're ever going to get control, you've really got to spend the time, and thus far it's looking good. The report itself with regard to pests, I commented on that previously. This report is brilliant, giving us an outline like that. It's very hard as a councillor. You've got to have enough knowledge to be able to ask a question about something. This provides the knowledge to then ask the question to gain further knowledge. And apart from that, the photos, look, it's just a gratuitous photo of dead weeds, which makes a farmer at heart very, very happy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bella. Are there other speakers? Councillor May, speaking for.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, so I just really wanted to highlight the in-house production of the annual report. I think the team have done a fantastic job in what is such an enormous task when you look at our organisation, and to bring together the highlights of 12 months in a comprehensive report. So I really wanted to congratulate our Corp Comms team in being able to achieve a fantastic result there. Also, the person-centred emergency preparedness. Our emergency team have done another great job in conducting that forum, the workshops that we've had, and now rolling that out through the libraries, in sessions through the libraries. I think it is really, really important for our people that are living on their own, or people with disabilities, that now have a comprehensive workbook that they can get their plans in readiness for the cyclone season. And let's touch wood that we don't have a cyclone season. But I think overall, like our emergency management team, we did our Cyclone Saturday. Great team effort. They work really well together, and very, very accommodating to the community. So congratulations.
Thanks very much, Councillor May. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion then. Those in favour. Councillor Jones.
In favour, Your Worship.
Didn't get that. Are you in favour?
In favour, Your Worship.
Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. 11.4.1, the Development Services Monthly Review for November and December. Director Newt.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm pleased to present to Council the Development Services Monthly Report for November and December. So development application numbers and construction activity was strong in 2020, and we finished the year with total application numbers and the value of construction activity higher than the end of year totals for the previous 4 years, which was excellent. Also, interest in holding events in Makai has increased since COVID-19 eased, with Makai's proven track record in hosting events leading to the town being selected to be part of the North Queensland Hub for the Women's National Basketball League season in 2020. With support from Council's Invest Makai Events and Conference Attraction Program, a number of Women's National Basketball League games were held at the Makai Basketball Stadium in November. Council endorsed a revised tradable development rights policy in December following stakeholder consultation in October. The revised policy clarifies certain elements of the policy and better integrates the policy with Council's local planning framework.
A 2 weeks of Christmas treats series of events was held in December at the Mackay Regional Botanic Gardens. This included both facilitated and self-guided activities, with all booked activities fully subscribed, up to 40 attendees per session at the drop-in activities, and over 400 self-guided activity sheets printed and used. The Serena Sugar Shed launched its hamper season in November, which proved to be incredibly popular, with strong sales in December. Corporate orders were higher than previous years, with several large orders received. The Sugar Shed also launched 2 new limited edition products in December, the Sugar Shed Classic and the Tropical Nice on Ice. The Classic sold out in 8 days, and sales of the Tropical Royal were strong. And with that, I would like to present this report to Council for consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. Certainly a very positive report to read. It was great to read. Are there questions for the Director? Councillor Mann.
So electronic page 195, in upcoming events, we say Italian Street Party and Blue Water Fling are funded by Mackay City Centre funding, and given that that levy is no longer charged, I'm wondering how that is the case.
Director.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Those are carryover projects, so they were previously funded and they were actually cancelled in 2020 because of COVID. So that funding's just been carried over, and hopefully those events can go into.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the Director? No further questions. Good report, Director. Thank you very much. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Englert moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Englert.
Thank you, Worship. The program's done an excellent job. If you read the bid to host the 2021 National Economic Development Conference was successful. That's a great coup for this council and for this region. Had so many people from different places coming over here for the 21 National Conference. The inaugural recreation fishing strategy is chaired by Councillor Hassan. The meeting was held on the 30th of November. It was a good, well-attended meeting with a lot of good outcomes moving forward on that strategy, and also the nominations for the community reference group for the Northern Beaches Community Hub project closed in December. Council's approved the development permit for the construction of the Great Barrier Reef Arena at Harrop Park Country Club, and as you mentioned, being a positive report, Your Worship, there's green lights across the entire report except for 2 orange ones, but it's not their fault. Botanic Gardens projects, one of those lights refers to moving forward on that desilting trial, and it looks like we're having better success this time around. And they're doing some hard work chasing the weed management due to equipment issues and two types of weed occurring while they're getting rid of one's propping up. So, and I'll just bring everyone's attention to the 13th of February, the AFWL match between the Gold Coast Suns and Carlton at the Great Barrier Reef Arena Stadium, brought to you by Mackay Regional Council Attractions. So,
thanks very much, Councillor. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura speaking for.
For the motion, Your Worship. No, just in relation to the value of approved operational works. As you know, Your Worship, I've followed this for the whole year, and it has grown dramatically over the year, and that line is way above the other year, with a further $9.2 million for December. So that's the end of our end of our reporting year for approved operational works, coming in at sort of $55 million. Is an excellent result for our region. It just shows that we are moving ahead. We are moving ahead quite strongly. So I think that's a real positive for our community. And we start again this year, Director, to see how we go for 2021. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Are there other speakers? Councillor May speaking for.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I just really wanted to highlight the Serena Sugar Shed and the fantastic result there that we've seen in November and December. You know, tour numbers are good, product sales are good. That, you know, the hamper season was fantastic for us. Staff are really rallying together to be able to make sure we're competitive in the marketplace. We've got a great tourism offering there, and we're looking to build on that. So that Ian, the coordinator there, and his team are doing a great job.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. And as I said, it's a very pleasing report to read. That one. It's fantastic. As they all are, Directors, I'm sorry, but this was very, very pleasing to read, yes. So are there further questions? Is there further speakers to this? No further speakers. Will put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
Thank you. The motion is carried. 11.4.2, the proposed function facility at 6 Lawson Street at Midge Point. We have a speaker in the public gallery registered to speak to this, and we'll hear from Terry McMullen first of all. So, Mr McMullen, thank you very much, and welcome to Council. The public participation is 3 minutes. This is not an interactive session. We'll listen to what you say and take it on board. But as I said, it's not an interactive, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Alison. We've actually put in an objection. Our conclusion and the main objection from page 8 of 8. I don't know if the councils have got access to it at the moment, but I'll take an excerpt out of page 33. UPS is a company that's doing the application on behalf of the owner. We object to the UPS conclusion, but do agree that the proposed development has been considered against relevant assessment benchmarks applying to the impact assessable development. As previously stated, the proposed development is not in line and does not enhance the current zoning of rural residential, and in our opinion should be rejected. There are so many impacting factors that have not been mentioned in this application proposal. The application does not mention the actual width of the road, which is only 5.2 metres. The roadway currently caters for residential vehicle traffic, pedestrian traffic. There are no provisions for hard surface footpaths in the street. Horse riding traffic and bicycle traffic in the street happens very often. The proposed hour of operation will undoubtedly impact families with their time together as leisure, school, homework, and all of the surrounding neighbours' sleeping habits and general mental well-being. Our objection seems to be the only fair way to protect and ensure the upholding of the lifestyle and the rights of the neighbouring community from being potentially and undoubtedly impacted. So please, when you do get an opportunity to have a look at it, please consider our lifestyle. There are opportunities for these people to adopt another site in the area which is actually zoned commercial, and they're only limited, and there has been limited for a long period of time. But to be right on the doorstep of so many families and what it's going to do to them, I think totally out of consideration. So thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate this is a privilege to be here and speak. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks very much, Mr McMullen. Thank you. Okay, so this report, we've had an extensive briefing on this, councillors. Are there questions for the Director before? Questions from Councillor Bonaventura?
Just in relation to the sewer, I note that the system that's been proposed will accommodate 100 people, and when the development is seeking to accommodate a maximum of 150, they're suggesting that they will use portable toilets. How difficult will that be to police or to ensure that that's how that operates?
Director?
Thank you, Worship. It's always challenging with any development to police the conditions. There's a resourcing burden involved. In this case, we think the condition and the infrastructure that's proposed is reasonable. You tend not to cater for the maximum capacity in the venue. In this case, we feel that the system they're proposing to cater for 100 attendees is suitable, and we think it's practical to be able to bring additional toilets if need be. The toilets, there's different types of demountable toilets that can be brought in to cater for events now, and some can be sort of a higher quality to suit the nature of the events that may be held at this venue. So we don't see this condition as potentially being problematic for them to comply with, and for that reason we're comfortable to have that condition posed.
Councillor Bonaventura, do you have another question?
I do, in relation to the capacity of that 100-person unit. Do we have that as per an all-weather event? For example, when we get prolonged wet weather within the region, the ground is saturated. I would assume that if that becomes flooded, it creates an issue. Whose responsibility would that issue be if it starts to move into neighbouring properties or leaches out from there? Where's the responsibility?
It'll be with Your Worship, it'll be with the landowners. The system will have to be designed to cater for the numbers proposed and for the soil types and the climatic conditions. So it will all have to be designed and licensed appropriately. And then if there's any issues with it not being maintained properly or any failures with the system, the obligation to fix that and to rectify any issues will lie with the applicant.
the applicant. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Further questions?
Yes, Your Worship, if I can.
Yes, Councillor Jones.
Just want to ask a question about the 5 metre width of the bitumen road. Obviously equating that to my driveway that fits 2 cars. How with the usage of that residential area, how will the 40-person bus not be a risk to local residents on a 5 metre bitumen road?
Director, are you able to answer that?
Yes, Your Worship. The condition of the local road network was assessed as part of the application, and based on the nature and amount of traffic to be generated by this development, there were no upgrades required. So the width of the road and the standard of the road construction is considered to be sufficient to cope with the bus traffic, given the limited amount of traffic that will be generated by the development based on the intended method of operating and ferrying people to and from the site by bus.
Okay. So, councillors, this is an impact assessable DA in the rural residential zone, and it's been recommended to be approved subject to conditions. As I said, we've had an extensive briefing on this. Director, is there anything else you'd like to bring to the table right now? And I'll ask for further questions from them.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'll probably just state that, as was pointed out by one of the submitter who spoke, this is an impact assessable application. It's not necessarily on its face consistent with the zoning. However, if you look at the overall local planning framework that applies to the Mackay region and to the site through the strategic framework, there is support for this type of bespoke development occurring on the site, in that even though it is a centre-based activity that could be held in this, could be undertaken in a centre zone, it relies on the amenity that is provided on this particular site for it to go ahead as intended. So for that reason, we think there is sufficient support in the planning scheme for the development. We think any of the potential impacts on the surrounding area that could be caused by this commercial activity can be mitigated by way of the conditions that are proposed. And there are some quite stringent conditions that are proposed for this development, which the applicant has been happy to take on board. So based on that, we think this is something that will provide overall benefit to the region and the region's economy. It will provide another form of venue for someone who wants to get married and potentially draw people into the region and have that benefit, but also can be undertaken in a way that will mitigate any impacts on the surrounding area.
Okay, so following that presentation, are there further questions? Councillor May.
Just a question in relation to the noise management plan, and we've requested that a device be put there so that it can monitor the noise. How is that data retrieved, you know, and where does that go? Can it be done off-site, you know, like is it something you can do remotely, or is it, how does that work?
Director.
Thank you, Worship. I might have to take that on notice. I don't know the intricacies of those devices. I don't believe it's accessed off-site. It's all on-site. We wouldn't have access to it. There would be a requirement or an onus, on the applicant to make sure that those conditions are complied with and that device is utilised the way that it's intended to be. And then we would have to follow up and do our own inquiries if there was any complaints or issues.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor England moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor England.
Thank you, Worship. This is one of those times where one can be conflicted, because there's the balance of what we're trying to achieve as a council as to the impact of the people that we represent in this region as well. There is an opportunity for some economic drive in that region. I hear the submitter, and part of the rationale when you make decisions on these things, you ask yourself, how would you feel if it was next door to you? I've taken that into account. That there are 32 conditions on this project. I believe that the director is in the position to ensure that this development, does what it's supposed to do in the interests of what this council is agreeing to let them do. And if they don't, then they're responsible for that. as a person who's voting on this to follow through with this, not fully understanding what the impact might be on those neighbours, I'm willing to see how it goes and be responsible for anything that doesn't work. And as I've done on many other projects, if I have to, I'll sit on that road for how many ever hours it takes to hear what the residents have to say if there's an issue with this moving forward. But I consider that the conditions put on by the director are sufficient for this to be a success without impact on the local residents. But we will be watching closely.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Bella.
I have any number of concerns with this. Firstly, it's interesting when you've got one big question that can often be handled, but there's any number of questions with regard to this. Small questions, but they've all been solved by, or supposedly solved by, the proponent agreeing to certain conditions. Now, in 5 years in council, I've seen this happen many, many times, where they agree to conditions, they go out and pretty much completely ignore it, and we're pretty much a toothless tiger. In actual fact, in one council and community day, we had a person there that was actually bemoaning controlling people at events that he never should have had, that he guaranteed that he wasn't going to have. Now, when you look at this, I go a little bit with human nature. The people living around there would have never expected something like this to occur. 2 hectares is not a big area. And I'd defy anyone on an area like that to completely get rid of the amount of sound. Now, Thursdays to Saturdays, generally getting towards a weekend when people are looking at, maybe relaxing a bit, being at home after a weekend's work. Sewer, catering for 100 people, but they can have 150. I would assume those extra toilets would be sourced to Mackay at great cost. So if it's good for 100 people, if you've got 105 people, do you go and get one toilet? Because it's going to cost pretty much the same to transport it up. 110 people, do you push it? At what point do you make those changes? I feel it's not right that it be put on the people around there to make a complaint if they go against the conditions that they've agreed to. I'm really uncomfortable with this. As I said, once again, it's not a big space. The idea that everyone's going to be packed up and gone by 10 o'clock, to be honest, that's staff included. So it means that when do you finish the event? 9 o'clock? And then, because there's got to be a bit of clean-up time. So, there's just so many small things here that to me are problematic. Are we going to enforce these conditions that we have here? Well, what are we going to actually do if they don't do it? And as I said, we throw the onus back on the people around it to become complainers. And many are uncomfortable. I don't think it should be put in this case. And like I said, I say again, the people around there would not have expected a development like this next door to them.
Thanks, Councillor. Speaker 4. Are there any other speakers? Any other speakers? First of all, Councillor Bonaventura, you're speaking.
I'm against it, Your Worship. As you know, normally I would support this type of business in a rural area because I believe it brings employment, etc., to local small communities, which we're trying to develop. And I appreciate the extensive conditions that staff have placed on the applicant. I also appreciate Councillor Englert's wish to go up there and sit there and see how it goes. Unfortunately, once we approve it, it's approved. And countless hours sitting there will not do us any good. We have to make the decision first. And I'm unfortunately against approving this today, simply on 2 things. One, it's a rural residential zone. A rural residential zone, not a light commercial, not a business zone, rural residential. And the other one is in relation to the sewer. I'm sorry, but I cannot accept that we can set a 100-person limit and ask them to provide other toilets after that will work. I also am not confident that a 100-person unit will work if we get continuous wet. We often go out into our own yards after days of rain, which we get in our region, and it is as soggy as all hell. So this sort of thing will not cope with that. I don't believe it will. Same as everything, we design our own roads and our drains for a 1 in 5 year. If we get a lot of wet weather in one period, the event's still going to go on. They've planned it months in advance. They're still going to have their events on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It will overflow. And that becomes, yes, it's the owner's responsibility, but it will go into those neighbouring properties. And I am not comfortable with that. So I am voting no, and I urge councillors to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaker 4, Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. It's always very difficult when you have situations like this where the rural amenity is questioned, the people that live there is questioned. But then in many of the meetings that I've attended at Midge Point, where I continually hear the community yelling out for economic opportunities and economic growth in their area. So in our job, it's a very difficult balancing act to get that right. I think that the staff have done a great job in assessing this application. They've gone to great consideration to make sure that the community's needs have been addressed and the conditions mitigate those circumstances for the residents that are there. So with that, I think this is a great opportunity. I've had the fortunate to attend a wedding at another location just like this up in the Whitsunday Shire, and they manage it very well. They manage the whole exiting the property very well. There is no questions that this cannot be done because it's being done in other places. So I think it's important that we've got the conditioning right. We've tried to mitigate the residents' concerns, and it's a great opportunity for economic growth in the Midge Point area.
Thank you. Speaker against. Are there any other speakers? Councillor England, you wish to exercise a right of reply?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Well, councillors, to quote, it will overflow, it will go onto other people's property. We as councillors making decisions can't make assumptions on what might or might not happen when we make decisions on this. We can't make unqualified assessment on our decisions. That's why we have these highly qualified people. Our highly qualified people are telling us that there is an opportunity here, and they will put conditions in to make sure that bad things don't happen as a result. Councillors can't make decisions on their own, on their unqualified opinion. End of story. Our officers have told us what they can do, what can happen under the planning scheme. There's an opportunity here, and of course, submitters always have a deep impact on how we make decisions here, and we take that into consideration. But more so, we have our very qualified people telling us what can be done here, and that's why I support the motion.
Thank you very much. So, councillors, this is a recommendation from our officers and an impact assessable DA. There's 30 odd conditions attached to it. You've heard the arguments. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Okay, those against? So, Councillor Jones, how are you voting?
I'd like to vote against, Your Worship.
Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 against. The motion is carried. Thank you. The 11.4.3 is the establishment of the Northern Beaches Community Hub Reference Group. This is fairly well straightforward. Are there questions, councillors? No questions. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Like you said, it's pretty straightforward, but I think it's really important. The Northern Beaches Community Hub will be a great asset for our community, and in particular the Northern Beaches area. So it's really, really fantastic that we've gone to expressions of interest for interested community members from that area to form part of the reference group that'll help guide this project. So congratulations to Councillor Green and Councillor Hassan for being part of that as part of council representation. And it is, I think we're just looking forward to getting our feet under the desk and getting the reference group established and starting to work in that space.
Thanks very much. Councillor May, speaker against. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Councillor Jones?
For the motion, Your Worship.
Thank you. The motion is carried. 11.4.4, the Environmental Sustainability Strategy. This is an interim review We have had briefings on this one, councillors, as well. This is interim. It's updating what's already there. And as interim, it will be, as you know, we have our strategy sessions coming up in February, which will attack some of the strategic direction of council going forward. But right now, we're required to do some interim updating. So, Director, is there anything you'd like to say? You used to speak to this?
I'll just speak for your worship. Just to say that it is an interim review. We do need to start thinking now about preparing a new strategy in accordance with the overall vision and strategy work that's being done. But yeah, this is really updating, changing some of the actions to acknowledge the work that's already been done or changes in circumstances, and also be realistic about what we can achieve over the next couple of years, so we can then focus at an officer level on delivering on those actions.
Thank you. CEO, is there anything you wish to add?
No, just re-emphasising the point. This is interim. It's sort of building on what we're currently doing, resourcing, and this will probably be one of the things that gets revisited at the council workshops.
Thank you. Questions? Any questions? No questions? Would somebody like to move then? The report's adoption. Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Worship. As we know, this plan has been, this strategy has been around since 2017-18. Our officers have done a great job in trying to implement some of the actions that were outlined in the strategy. And really, yes, this is just we said when we adopted that strategy, we'd stop and have a look about halfway through, go back and measure what we've already done, tick those off, and then look to the future about completing the rest of the strategy. So I, for one, am looking forward to having an updated relook at the strategy when we do our workshopping around strategies. But I support the motion to adopt this update today.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Ballard.
I had a number of reservations about this policy, this strategy. And I'd like to say at the outset that I'm very much in favour of an equitable, effective, evidence-based sustainability strategy. A number of my questions that were put forward were unable to be answered. I hope they'll be taken into consideration with the new strategy. That in itself is not the issue. What I'm extremely worried about is the targeting of one group without right of reply in this strategy, and I don't think it's justified in any way. I did some ringing around. Now, I'll jump ahead. The actual, in section 3, clause 18, improve farm management practices and raw water quality upstream of Dumbleton Weir. Now, apparently this is in keeping with participation in Reef Guardian Council programs, the key threats: climate change, coastal development, land-based runoff, direct human use. Now, how do we go from land-based runoff to farm management practices? Farms are already extremely regulated in what we do with regard to runoff. Most of the changes were done voluntarily. The reef regulations that came in are to the point of draconian, with the fines being massive. The cost to comply voluntarily prior to that is in the many tens of thousands of dollars for most farms. So we've gone from land-based runoff to farms. Now, if we look at that catchment, there is tens of thousands of acres of national park. And as we saw time and again, poorly managed national parks lead to massive weed infestations, and the fires we saw, which led to massive erosion. We have any number of tonnes of gravel that goes on council roads. Maybe we should be looking at that as a source of erosion. 90,000 tonnes throughout our area every year. That doesn't just disappear. We did the Gorge Road. Part of that was not just the state of the road, but the complaints about sedimentation. And we're about to put a 100-kilometre scar on near vertical terrain on decomposed granite area with no strategy to control possible erosion. What I'm saying is we've named an area here that has a demonstrated, or an industry that has a demonstrated record of improving practices. We are farming areas that we farmed 110 years ago, and we've still got dirt there to farm, and it's still going well. When there's any number of other areas that fall under the heading of land-based runoff that we haven't mentioned. So my question is why? with no data to show that it's the worst or anything like that. So anyone that reads that action plan will straight away say, look at farms, they're the problem. They're the only problem because the only problem mentioned. I would therefore like to lay this on the table until we can rectify that small area, and then we can look at a new policy and a new strategy in the 12 months.
So are you moving?
I'm moving to lay it on the table.
There's a procedural motion to lay it on the table. Those in favour? Those against? I'll put that motion again. The procedural motion is to lay it on the table. Those in favour?
I'm in favour, Your Worship.
Those against? Okay, we'll lay it on the table. And it will lay on the table for 1 month. Thank you. Let's move on. 11.5.1. It's the first of our Eci reports for the year, and our Director, Jason Devitt, who's celebrating 25 years with Mackay Regional Council. Congratulations, Director.
So just firstly highlighting no LTIs in the period of November and December, which is really pleasing to see. You'll see that we've, on our recent practice runs, October and November, that our rural roads are in extremely good condition, so very pleasing to see. I think that's probably linked closely to Council's decision a few years ago to increase the amount of gravel applying on the road. So we'll see how we go through the wet season, but obviously leading in the wet season was very pleasing to see the condition of the roads. You'll see that we've been doing open drain maintenance, and we did a fair bit of work at the Cod Hole Beach outlet. We did have a couple of issues there with that gate in relation to it not sealing properly, so we're just having a look at that at the present. We believe it's probably caused some debris coming up and then causing the gates not to close fully. So Graham Moores and his team are looking at some options there, and hopefully we'll be able to address that shortly. Very pleasing to see that we've completed all our DRFA works on the North Queensland Far North Queensland Monsoon Trough. So it's probably one of the first times we actually don't have any DRFA works occurring. So pleasing to see. So the last two works were Westwood Road and Beach Road completed prior to Christmas. And just a final comment, obviously lots of wet weather leading up over Christmas time. Generally our road network held up really well, so that's very pleasing to see, but obviously caused a lot of work for our staff to be called out over the Christmas period.
Thanks, Director. Questions on the transport and drainage? Councillor Ballard.
I have a question that actually comes from a member of the public. He said that he'd been speaking to some of our staff that were doing his road, and he was under the impression that we're actually mixing with our gravels, trialling things such as rubber and glass and things like that. Is that actually the case, or is that merely with our putting it into our asphalting and whatever?
Yeah, through your worship. So we do intend to trial some glass. We haven't done it yet. So the only works that have been done on Untitled Road were the access to Hogan's Pocket, but we are looking at the opportunity to try and incorporate that as a trial to see how it runs, but it hasn't been completed yet.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Further questions? No further questions. Thank you very much. Would somebody like to move then the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. As the Director mentioned, no LTIs in the reporting period, so a big thanks to all staff in that program for their focus on safety. Not surprising with the wet weather, during the 2-week closure that there was lots of call-outs and other staff were required to be called on. I think with the amount of rain that fell, it was only natural that was going to happen with the continued traffic on the roads. Open drain maintenance with a high focus in preparation to the wet season. Drain maintenance teams did continue to work through the Christmas closure and continued program maintenance. And client surveys, again, I'd really like to mention, they're overwhelmingly positive, and it's a great reflection of the staff that work in that program, but also the great reflection of the staff that take the requests as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura.
Just quickly, Your Worship, in relation to the completion of the Dalrymple Road landslip. Well done, and also the capital works area, but it is an excellent result and something that we'll certainly hold that road in place. So yes, it's taken some time, certainly taken some time, but it's good to see it finished.
Great, thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Councillor Bella speaking for.
It's a topic which I often speak of, but the work on our gravel roads has been outstanding in that they have held up well. There is some damage post that last rain event, which is to be expected. I'm very glad we're trialling that glass. As I said, I referred to sustainability before. Reusing things like that is great because we've got that pile down there that we're struggling to use, and these sort of investigations, I believe, are very valuable. The other thing I'd like to say is there's been some comments from the public, and indeed on my road, the work on the narrower bitumen sections on the shouldering has been outstanding. I think that we do need to move towards the distance or the amount that it is that the shoulder is allowed to come down from that bitumen is a historical level. And I think with the changes in tyre profiles and things like that, it's something we need to look at. I think we probably need to reduce it. But as I said, I'll say it once again, the work thus far on those shoulders is outstanding.
Thanks very much, Councillor Banner. Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? And Councillor Jones?
In favour of the motion, Your Worship.
So your motion is carried. Thank you. Let's move on now. So ECI report for December 2020 for waste.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, no LTIs within the waste business for the period of time. You'll probably see that we had an increase in municipal waste going to Hogan's Pocket in December. So the last few months of last year do show a slight trend upwards. So we continue to have a look at that. Really pleasing to see there's only 13 missed bins out of 280,000 picked up in December. So great result again from JJ Richards. We just awarded Golder as a consultancy to undertake review of our closed landfills. So we'll look to undertake that work, bring that back to council and talk about the situation there and the risks that may exist. You'll see that there was increased tonnages coming into the MRF as Rockhampton's MRF had a fire in November. So it looks like they'll probably continue to accept the material for up to 6 months while they rectify their own situation. So you will see in that also that there's a slight increase in the amount of material obviously going to landfill as well with that increased tonnages. And the last one just is on voucher redemption rates. They seem to be fairly consistent, but just a reminder that the current vouchers are only valid to the end of March, so people to utilise those that have been distributed. Otherwise, have to take them.
Thanks, Director. Questions for the Director on this report? No questions? Somebody like to move the...
Sorry, just a question.
You have a question, Councillor?
Yeah, just in relation to the 1,500 hours of volunteer staff hours at the recovery centre. Who does that entail? Who are those volunteers? Is it through what organisation is the volunteering?
Thank you, Director.
Yes, through your wish. We'll have to take on notice where they're actually getting, but obviously those people are working incredible, but I can confirm that.
Yeah, that'd be good, thank you.
Councillor Bello, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I know the 13 out of that number of bins is minuscule, but like, what is the reason for a missed bin? Is it someone that's not used to the run, just doesn't know where they are, or is there an element of someone that's late getting their bin down there and wants it picked up and rings council? I think what I'm trying to get at is what is a realistic minimum? I think if it's a new guy, you'll always get a couple. If it's that other, then I think we're probably at the point where we're doing as best we possibly can already.
Director.
Yeah, through your worship. I think the issue is exactly as you stated. So it could be a change in operator, or it could be someone sick and someone else has to do a new route. So generally, if the bin's not presented, it's not counted. So we have cameras there that will pick up and there's no bin presented. So they're actual bins that have been out.
So yeah, so they can take that out of the equation.
Operator error. So normally associated, it might be a new operator coming in, or say if someone's sick and another operator has to take up the route.
That's excellent.
Further questions? No further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Hassan moves. Seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor Hassan.
I unfortunately, I'm starting on a negative after reading in the report about another incident in December related to a contractor experiencing a near miss when a fire broke out in one of the rubbish trucks. And I just want to just highlight to the community the importance of not disposing of hazardous items in their general waste bins. Now, our staff and contractors deserve to work in a safe environment and go home to their families at the end of the day. And having items such as gas bottles and batteries in your general waste bin poses a huge risk of injury to those staff and contractors. So I just implore the public to be a little bit more careful and thoughtful about what they're placing into their bins. On a lighter note, Council's contractor continues to work to locate new markets for our recyclable products at the Materials Recovery Facility, and during December, clean cardboard, glass, mixed paper, steel and PET 1 recyclables all found in markets. As we've just mentioned, the statistics for December related to our bin collection were really good right across the board, the KPIs, not just the bin collection, but out of that 283,000 bin lifts, that 13 is 0.00426% of the total, so that's a pretty outstanding result. As the Director alluded, we've also seen an increase in tonnages being received and processed due to the issues with Rockhampton, and I just think that demonstrates the collaboration between regional councils where we can help out our neighbours down the road and continue to do so until such time as their facility is repaired. And also just focusing on the Waste Services team and their continuous effort to focus on business improvement practices, and I'd just like to commend them on their efforts.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hassan. Are there other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
Motion's carried. Thank you. And ECI for Water Services, Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. So firstly, just highlight, obviously, with the wet weather we've been having since Christmas, it's caused us a few issues in relation to water quality. So we've got an ongoing issue up at this point, which we're going to brief council a little bit later on some options to deal with that. But that's an issue that's been occurring for since early December through till this period is still occurring around iron and manganese coming from our water source. And we also had some issues with the Mackay Road water treatment plant. So due to the rain, we've had to switch over to bores, and again that changes the chemical composition of the water we're putting out. So we had some spots where we had dirty water. So we're doing some work around trying to have a look at some of our trend data and try and pick that up a little bit earlier. So hopefully going forward we're more prepared to be able to get those key indicators and be able to deal with those water quality issues a little bit earlier. Obviously with the corresponding rain we've had a drop in consumption, but it's probably time to reconfirm that obviously the usage period for the next billing period, people still need to remember that September to December was dry and there was lots of water being used, and that's will be part of your next water bill, not the current low water usage that we're currently seeing. It's great to see the customer survey results. So they've always been strong in the water area around our customer survey responses. So really pleasing to see. Other than I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Director. Questions for the Director around water? Councillor Seymour.
Yeah, just one of the issues here is non-residential properties is 516 leaks. Is that something that's normal or?
That's a good pickup. Director.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. So yeah, we seem to have an issue with the non-residential leaks, the commercial ones, and I suppose it's an issue about the property owner being able to locate those and chase them. And it depends on the severity of the leak. I mean, if you're sitting at about 15 litres a second, you know, it's probably costing you less than $1 a day in relation to the cost of the water. So, you know, we continue to send reminders, but there is certainly an issue about trying to get some of those longer term leaks. But, you know, a good example might be Cairnslands, where they might fix a leak in a toilet and another leak occurs somewhere else because it's so big. So, but it's something we're trying to continue to look at, and how we can obviously make sure that those leaks are addressed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think one of the surrounding parts of that question was, is it normal? It's a bit higher than.
Normally what we're seeing sort of consistent numbers around the leak for non-resident businesses.
Right, okay, thank you. Further questions, Councillor Bonaventura?
I'll just further that, I've got one on behalf of Councillor Jones. Just in relation to, are we sure some of those contact numbers, especially for residential properties, are getting to them? I know we send text messages, etc. It was more she was interested to know whether we were confident that all those contacts were legit. It wasn't just going into the void.
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah, it's a good question, and I think there are some issues this. So we obviously go off our rates-based data. So, you know, it could be that if there's we had an example once where there was a leak at a Bunnings, and, you know, we send that to someone in Sydney and there's nearly 6 degrees of separation to get back to the operator. So certainly that is an issue for us. So we haven't gone out actively trying to get the best contact, and that might be a step to have a look at, to get a local contact rather than someone that might be outside the state. So it's something we'll continue to work on and try and look to trying to get the information to the right people to be able to do and make informed decisions about what they can do around those leaks.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Moved by somebody? Councillor May. Seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I don't know why everybody's very reluctant to move the water report. It's a great report. I think that the team there do a fantastic job. There's some, you know, our MyH2O registrations continue to improve. We've seen a little bit of a drop-off in our plumbing applications this month, but overall, when you look at the trend, that is very good. And I don't know about other councillors, but I take that as a very good indicator as to new houses being built, so new people coming to live in our Mackay Regional Council area. I think also the drop-off in water usage, we were very, very lucky, and it came just at the right time, the rain over the Christmas period. Our water storages now are full again, and people can have that little bit of relaxation of actually having to pay for water to, as we know, water their gardens and those types of things. Overall, there was a lot of work orders created, that fairly high percentage closed out. So I think the department continues to work fantastically, and response times, and we don't actually measure response times, but response times to water leaks and things, I think if you wanted to measure that, you'd find it's very, very good. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor May. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. Councillors, I actually copied you in on the department's intent for the Mitch Point water supply. This is a long-term solution to the problem up there. There's a couple of short-term solutions, and I want to commend the department for developing that program straight away. So we'll keep an eye on that. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
Motions. Are there any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.5.5, the contractual arrangement for tendering exemption. So that report is fairly well straightforward. Did I miss one? Oh, drainage. Drainage. I was getting so excited.
How could you miss those
drainage
pages?
Right, that's right. I missed it because I didn't mark it. Okay, so the Northwest Mackay Undergrad Beaconsfield drainage study. CEO, do you want to speak to this?
No, Director.
Director? Okay.
Just looking to formally adopt studies that have been completed. So
yeah. I'm sure councillors have read all those pages. It was a pretty big but very comprehensive report, and well done. Are there questions for the Director around this report? No questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption, 11.5.4? Moved by Councillor Mann, seconded by Councillor May. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. And it was an enormous amount of work that's been done, identifying, I guess, some key risks, but there's been options given for every area that's mentioned in the report. So I'm confident that we'll keep an eye on what we can do into the future, and certainly take into account what the report has recommended.
Thank you very much. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Councillor Jones?
For the motion.
Thank you. Carried unanimously. 11.5.5 now, the contractual arrangement for a tendering exemption. Are there questions? Director, is there anything you'd like to do to say to this report?
Very quickly, Your Worship. It's really the supplier of the odour control units is who we're looking to appoint. I probably should have the expertise with that type of unit. Our staff have assessed the contract rates and are happy with them, so we're looking to obviously appoint someone directly.
Okay. There's no questions. Somebody would like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Englert moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Englert.
I'm happy with the Director's comments.
Okay, we'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Councillor Jones?
For the motion, Your Worship.
There's nobody against, and so passed unanimously. Thank you. 11.5.1, the Organisational Services Monthly Review for November and December. Director Lamb.
Good morning, Your Worship. Safety continues to be a focus with no LTIs reported since 2017-18. Some highlights over the past couple of months include the QAO audit and certification of the 1920 annual financial statements was completed and an unmodified audit opinion provided. The annual staff award ceremony was conducted on 3rd of December. The ceremony looked a little different due to COVID, but a total of 123 staff were nominated and a total of 60 staff were recognised for their efforts. Shortlisting of the 2021 apprentice and trainee intake is underway. The intake consists of 6 full-time equivalent roles and is on track for induction in March 2021. A total of 255 applications were received for these positions. Information Services continues to drive cyber security awareness and training throughout the organisation. Cyber security remains a high risk of the organisation and requires everyone to be vigilant and alert in detecting potential threats. Improvements to MRC's safety incident management system was finalised in December. These changes allow for better data analysis, improved monitoring and new lead indicators and streamlined user interface to enhance the user experience. An increase in building improvements from private certifiers in December saw MRC process 267 lodgements with 99% resolved within 5 business days. The customer service team continued to achieve high customer satisfaction ratings. Completed surveys in November and December indicate that 98% of our external customers were satisfied with the service provided. It should be noted that grade of service fell below benchmark during the November and December due to staff vacancies, coinciding with break reminders and water notices. Expect to see an increase in this KPI in future months as new staff are recruited and trained. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Are there questions for the Director? One day everybody's going to put up their hand, Director. So well done on another comprehensive report, and yeah, that was a good report to read again. And those building approvals, again, from both departments' perspective, fantastic. Okay, would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. So no LTIs since 2017-18 year, and I think that needs to be acknowledged, and congratulate all staff for the continued focus. 9 business improvement projects in progress. I think it's really good that we challenge ourselves as a council on how we're doing things, how we can continually improve for our ratepayers. Most of shared services KPIs were exceeded, which was really fantastic to see. And as the Director said, grade of service was below target, but there were some mitigating circumstances. And I'm sure that we'll get back on track again with everybody back from leave, and I guess different circumstances where we don't have the notices going out. Council does continue to experience challenges with filling some positions, but it was good to see that there were the number of applications actually received for people wanting to work at council, and the number of positions that were filled in November and December, so that was really good. And cyber security does continue to be a major focus for this council. I think it's really important that we all play our part in ensuring that we're doing the right thing with our systems.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Ballard speaking for.
I just want to comment on the cybersecurity thing, and I know one of the councillors a couple of days ago asked for yet another briefing or overview or training regarding that, and I think it's a very good call. I note that a couple of people have said, and I myself noticed that while it's not exactly cybersecurity, there's a massive increase in bogus phone calls, from tax departments, from this and that. It seems to be on the rise, and for that reason, I think it won't be long before they learn and adopt other approaches. So it just seems to reach a critical mass, and then things change. So one, I am looking forward to that training, and 2, I would actually say that we should be looking forward to, or in preparedness, for just a change in approach, because I think it's getting to that point that they'll figure something else out and they'll come hard. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ballard. Are there any other speakers? The speakers will put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
Nobody. Thank you. Now let's move on to agenda item 12. 12.1 is a receipt of petition for an objection to the establishment of a truck depot to be located at 4 Christo Street at Farley. CEO, is there anything you'd like to highlight on this one?
Only that there's no DA or any approvals in for any sort of truck depot or anything. There's certainly getting a permit to fill in on their land. So that's all I'd like to say at this stage.
All right, so I mean that's pretty well straightforward. The petition's there. The recommendation is that the petition be received and referred to the CEO for a report to be prepared to come back to council. Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Bonaventura moves. Councillor Green seconds. Councillor Bonaventura.
I was just happy to accept the officer's recommendation and look forward to a response from the staff on possibly at the next meeting, Your Worship. I don't believe there's much detail.
Thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried.
In favour, Your Worship.
Thank you. 12.2, the petition for pedestrian walkway on Sugarshed Road. Once again, the conclusion for this one is the petition be received and referred to the CEO and a report be prepared to come back to council for consideration, which investigates the issues identified within the petition. CEO, is there anything further you want to add to that? Other questions? No further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Bonaventura moves. Councillor Mann seconds. Councillor Bonaventura.
Again, happy to receive it, Your Worship, and pass it on to staff for determination.
Thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried.
In favour, Your Worship.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, Councillor Jones. The motion is carried. There are no tenders. There's no consideration of notified motions. Public participation. We've got a few in the public gallery today, and the first is Mr. Lang. Yeah. And so the public participation, I'll just go through it again. You've got 3 minutes. This is not an interactive session. We're happy to listen to what you say. If there's an outcome required, we'll pass it on to the CEO to deliver it to you later on.
Thank you. My issue is the goose ponds. 31 years ago, I lost my daughter and niece there, and the lack of maintenance to the works that's been done there. I've been in a few times to ask for something to be done and had no response up until last year. I took videos before we had the rain and then spoke with your secretary and she organised a few things. And still no one seems to want to get back to me to let me know what's going on. In that 30 years, I don't think much maintenance has been done to the timber work around the concrete edging that was put in. And you know, the work that has been done, I don't think is adequate enough. You can walk pretty much across the goose ponds in one section because of all the silt and build up around there. And yeah, I'd just like to know what council's going to do to upkeep what was recommended for it.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Langan. We'll pass that on to the CEO. The CEO will be in touch with you, and we'll leave it in his hands to give an operational update. Thank you very much, Mr. Vijaya, and welcome once again. 3 minutes, and as I said, this is not an interaction.
Councillors, I'd like to draw to the council's attention of the truck accident on Sunday. When the highways close in that section, all the traffic goes down the Walkston Homebush Road. And I would like to say the council and us locals are extremely lucky on 2 counts. Number one, the shoulders were done just before Christmas. I can say I stand right to that because there were some potholes there. They were extremely dangerous. And the amount of traffic that was on the road on Sunday, bumper to bumper, doing 100 kilometres an hour, and I could tell by their driving, they're not used to driving on single lane bitumen. There's 2 kilometres along that section that's not double lane bitumen. And another thing we're very thankful for that it wasn't heavily rained. If it was in flooding, that road floods, and we would have had a closure of a highway for nearly 16 hours. I think the council needs to have a serious look at those sections of single lane bitumen. And also, I'd like a big thank you to the councillors individually. I rang last year to every councillor on this committee, as well as the CEO, about real rates, and every councillor returned my call, and I really appreciated that, except for one councillor. Now, I rang this other councillor 3 times, and I did not get a return call. Now, my understanding of councillor is to help ratepayers when they have issues or listen to ratepayers. Well, if that's the way that councillor thinks he's doing his job, I think it's very important. All I can say is thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. And look, we'll ask the CEO and he may direct the director to get back to you to take up those issues of roads.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Diane Vella.
Good morning, everybody.
We haven't seen you for a long time.
No.
Welcome back to council.
Good morning, everybody. At the council meeting conducted on the 25th of November 2020, a mention was made by Jason Devitt in relation to the works at the Cod Hole. Not long after this work was finalised, a large tide came into this area, demolishing the work on the beachfront. Trees have fallen in and erosion has occurred. Should the erosion continue, I hate to think what would happen in the future. On the 12th of January 2021, I notified the council and the gates put in place were leaking. Water had gone over the walkway and into an area that we were told would be our park. Before the gates were designed, Dorothy and I went to Graham Hawes to ask a number of questions. Do they have anything to stop the rubbish entering the waterways? The response that in the early release of water, it would go to the Petrie Street gates and there are trash racks there. 2, how much water will it take to open the tidal gates? The response was 50 mil or 2 inches. On the 12th of January, I contacted Graham early in the morning and my husband sent some photos off his phone. After speaking to Graham, I am now aware that this depends on the amount of water on the seaward side of the gate. I spoke to Errol Payton during the council elections. Errol said to me, "Don't worry, it will go over the top." Good God, guys, if this has to happen, I will have to learn to talk underwater. The gates would have to be approximately 8 feet high. On the 14th of March 2013, I received from Stuart Holly, Director of Engineering, after I submitted a series of questions. Does the council have a drainage plan for the area of the CBD, South and East Mackay? And if so, can this be looked at by the public? An example of the plans was sent to me, and lo and behold, show that these plans show Bennington Esplanade fully constructed. In what year were the plans revised to leave the gates open? You cannot rely on a private developer to undertake public works in a specific time, as they are subject to market forces and other constraints. This leaves this area open to severe weather conditions, especially cyclones and tidal surges. It is wise to note that Bennington Esplanade has a wall in front of both reclaimed areas, and yet the lower areas are left unprotected. The water being channelled into this area has a greater force now because of the developments that have occurred in the higher areas. The town will suffer in the event of a tidal surge. I have received my insurance bill and it has gone up by 15.7% for a total of $513.04 in a 12-month period. Should any tidal water enter into the premises from an event, for example beach erosion, which is not the result of an event like a tidal surge generated by a cyclone, then we are not covered under our insurance. As many people in this area age, some even in their 80s, they may not be able to afford to rebuild. In this case, what will happen? I request a response from council in a reasonable time on council letterhead and posted to me, as all council correspondence has a disclaimer when sent by email. Please put all recent communications with Graham Hawes also with a council letter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and the CEO will see that that's followed up. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Wooldridge, Dorothy Wooldridge, thank you very much. We haven't seen you at council for a long time, so welcome.
I'm here to do with Di. I have watched Di Vella for several years attempting to accomplish her dream of floodproofing East Mackay. After much time over this, it has affected her health, so she thought she had been successful. Until the first king tide this year in 2021, as council had not done a proper job in maintaining. I wish this to be documented in the minutes and invite the CEO and councillors to attend to this problem area on the 11th of February 2021 at 11 a.m. Please inform us how many people will be attending. I spoke to Cameron Dick, Member of Parliament at Council Office, who stated he had allotted $4 million for Shelford Creek. Council stated all this area comes under that name. Then all of a sudden is now called Cod Hole. The old folks state, block the Cod Hole and the town will flood. I have received a copy of the council's portfolio and to my surprise, Karen May and Martin Bella are in charge of the drainage. No disrespect to Karen May and Martin Bella, but they don't live in Mackay and live in Serena, which leaves them relying on information that probably hasn't been updated to date and therefore unable to do their job properly. Not being local to our Mackay community, I would have thought Justin England, whose resume is disaster, like yours, as head of disaster, would have been more qualified to take care of drainage problems that will end up being a disaster when in the future in rain seasons when there is a high tide at the same time will definitely be a disaster. You yourself state we live on a floodplain, so in my opinion drainage should be top priority. The Queensland state government say drainage must be Q100, but council tells me none in Mackay can meet this standard. Ours is only Q5. I feel the large area of households which pay rates in East, South and West Mackay is able to maintain Shelford Creek as it is one drain already draining to the sea, so then when we may be able to have lower insurance. As head of disaster, where have you built our evacuation centres? None this side, but thanks to the sheep, the other side of the world, one was established in Northern Beaches, but only 700 people can accommodate. Considering Mackay has more than 100,000 people living here, this will probably cause panic if we are ever need to be used. Your advice is to go to family and friends, but once again, some elderlies don't have any or have no way of travelling. It would be comforting to know we have a plan in place that people need if in part of Mackay will flood that very quickly in the rain season and could lose their lives. Not wait until this happens before improving maintenance to make sure it has a better chance of not happening.
Dorothy,
After a long time...
Dorothy, thank you. You've gone for 3.5 minutes, so thank you very much.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we'll ask the CEO, probably via the directors, to take up those particular issues. And that's it for public participation. Late business, councillors. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd like to bring to the council's attention that a number of women councillors applied to the state government, the Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning. What a huge word that is to get out. For the Women in Local Government Leadership Program that's being funded by the department. So you had to put in an application to, with a supporting letter from the council to say that you would like to participate in that program. I believe, and to my knowledge, Councillor Green, Councillor Mann, Councillor Hassan, Councillor Townsend and myself have been accepted into the program, and that program will be conducted over an 8-week period from February through to September. The course is about development as a woman councillor, woman leader in local government, and we're going to be exploring self-awareness, clarity and purpose, resilience and agility, emotional intelligence and decision-making, courage and confidence in communications, situational awareness and strategic thinking, negotiating and managing conflict, recognising and responding to biased behaviours and behaviour types, differences, effective communication and building networks. I, for one, am very grateful for the opportunity to have been selected, and I look forward to participating in the program, open forums, webinars and a whole range of different things that the partner with that is Vital Leaders are going to deliver to us.
Thanks very much, Councillor May. Further late business? Councillor Bonaventura.
Just like to ask that the Director pass on my congratulations for the event at the MEC on the Monday evening on the eve of Australia Day. Great event, and the staff did a tremendous job. But also on Australia Day, it was a pleasure to attend several of the events that were hosted by the community in various areas. I think it's a credit to this council for providing the small amount of funding we do for them to have those events, and I think most of those events went off very, very well. All the ones I went to, the 6 I went to, were very well attended, and it was a pleasure to be there. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Further late business? I have to concur and say thank you to all councillors who actually attended particularly our LGA-sponsored Australia Day events yesterday. It was fantastic to see in our community, given that last year's was lost out. So it was a great result yesterday all round. So thank you, councillors, for putting in the time and effort to attend those particular ones that you went to. Certainly a bit going on from Serena to Kayla, which is fantastic. If there's no further late business, we'll move on to the confidential reports. Councillors, there's 3 or 4 perfunctory confidential reports there, four reports. Is there any reason to go in? I wouldn't expect. No reason to go into a closed session. All right, so we'll deal with the reports as they fall. First of all, at 17.2, the approved concessions under the Facilitating Development in the Makai region for December. Would somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor England moves. Or we'll do 17.1 first then. Okay.
That's all right.
17.1, the Legal Services Monthly Review. Oh, I'll be in trouble for getting legal services. Would somebody like to move that report? Councillor Green moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried.
In favour, Your Worship.
Thank you. Motion's carried unanimously. 17.2, the approved concessions under the Facilitating Development in the Makai region for December 20, moved by Councillor Englert, seconded by Councillor Green. Those in favour? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
Nobody against? Motion's carried unanimously. 17.3, the approved sponsorship under the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program for December. Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Those in favour? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
No against. Thanks very much. It's carried unanimously. And 17.4. The draft minutes of the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program Advisory Committee meeting of the 14th of December. Moved by Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor England. Those in favour? Councillor Jones?
In favour, Your Worship.
There's nobody against. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And that's it, councillors. Thanks very much for the first meeting. 12 o'clock, and I declare the meeting closed.